name's Adam Richard. I'm from Lakewood, Ohio. I work at Great Lakes Brewing Company, and I am the multimedia coordinator. I'm on the marketing team. It's a fancy title, but yeah, I do a bunch of stuff for the marketing. I love pretty much most things that are related to the outdoors. I love birding, love going fishing. This morning we were just out foraging. That's kind of a new thing for me. But if I'm able to stretch my legs and get fresh air, it's something I'm probably going to be into. I think the actual act of bird watching I've been doing probably since college. But I think the first time I really appreciated birds, if you will, I was probably a little kid. My parents would put out bird feeders and you know, I'd watch it from the window. My dad might take me on a fishing trip or something and he would point at the red-tailed hawks that you'd see driving down the highway. And what was kind of cool about that was, I remember my dad saying, wow, it's really neat to see a red-tailed hawk. You don't usually see those too often. But the population of red-tailed hawks and bald eagles have really kind of made a big comeback. So it's been cool kind of growing up with that as a kid and seeing them kind of, you know, make their great return, if you will. I would say my bird watching mentors have been my parents. Like I said, they put up the bird feeders when they were young, but it was them that really kind of turned me on to the idea of birding itself. It's actually a relatively new activity for them. When I was in college, my parents pointed out a yellow-rumped warbler that was passing through in their backyard. And I had never seen one. I thought it was really pretty. But they explained to me about this whole warbler migration that's happening right now, actually. It's the end of April into early May. But it's these tiny little songbirds that during the winter spend their time in South America, Central America, Colombia, Cuba, and then in the nesting period, they move all the way up into Canada and nest during our summer months. And I thought that was a really fascinating natural phenomena. So from seeing that yellow-rumped warbler from my parents, I'd say that was like the first time that really kind of sparked my interest in the idea of going out and actively looking for these types of birds. My favorite things about bird watching is that it's taught me to be observant and patient and really just kind of take in and reflect the things that are around me in the outdoors. When you go outside and you're birding, you really never know what you're going to see. There's a lot of days where I don't really see much, but I almost always see something in the wild that sparks my interest or catches my eye. And even if that doesn't happen, I enjoy the fact that I was outside, hiking around, getting fresh air, burning some calories. Because if I wasn't doing that, then I would be inside melting my brain with the television or eating ice cream and drinking beer or whatever. And that's all fun to do after I go outside and birding. But I just like birding is something that I can do that feels intellectually stimulating and kind of spiritually soothing. It's a very relaxing activity. I have grown to love bluebirds because that's what my partner Ashley loves. It's one of her favorite birds. I love cedar waxwings. They're beautiful, really interesting birds. Cedar waxwings are very subtle in how they look, but if you really take a look at them closely, they're striking, very colorful, beautiful patterns on them, but they're kind of unassuming. You really have to take a look at them. And I love owls just in general. I think they're so cool. It's amazing to hear them at night. Anytime I hear any owl call at night, whether it's a barred owl or a great horn, it always gives me goosebumps. I think it's really neat. The best part about bird watching is it's really easy to do. You can do it literally anywhere, at any time. You don't really necessarily need any equipment, but binoculars certainly help. If you're interested in getting into bird watching and you want to buy binoculars, you don't necessarily have to buy the most expensive pair or the most high-tech. Any kind will really do for you, will be fine. But what you really need is the willingness to go outside and to maybe take the earbuds out of your ears and maybe put your contacts in and just be quiet and listen and observe. And then just have the natural curiosity of maybe seeing something and asking yourself, what is that? And then looking it up, and I think you'd be surprised on some of the facts you'd find out about these birds. It's really interesting. It's a year-round activity. You can do it all the time. Now, Most birds are kind of like humans in that they are fair weather creatures, if you will. If it's pouring down rain, if it's a really nasty snowstorm, if it's super, super windy out, it's probably not the best conditions to go out. But if it's really cold, the birds will be out. If it's really hot, the birds will be out. I love birding in the morning just because usually there's less people out in the parks. A lot of the birds are kind of getting active. They start feeding after resting all night. But really any time of day is good for bird watching. I have found that birders are very friendly people. If you bump into them, they're almost always willing to talk about the birds that they're seeing, or hey, you should go check out this trail because we just saw this bird or whatever over there. It's a very friendly, opening, and helpful community. I will say this, I think I'm one of the youngest members of the community. There's certainly plenty of birders my age and younger. Yeah, there's plenty of retirees, and I've found retirees to be a very laid-back, friendly people, and I feel like I'm an old soul too, so I fit in just fine. What the city of Cleveland itself can do to help birds is turn off the lights, especially during high periods of bird migration. There's actually an organization throughout the United States called Lights Out, and Cleveland has its own chapter. It's called Lights Out Cleveland. And it works with different downtown buildings, encouraging them to turn off their lights, because what happens during the nightly migrations is birds get confused and they'll collide into the buildings. And that's how actually a lot of birds die, is from building collisions. So that's something that I encourage people, if they're living in apartments downtown, to be mindful of at night, is keep the lights off. And just in general, anyone in the Cleveland area, speak up on land preservation and conservation. Habitat decline is a huge issue, not just for birds, but for all species. You combine that with climate change, and it's kind of a 1-2 punch. And we're not really helping our animals and our native plant life and birds when we decide that we need to build another golf course or another church or another huge luxury apartment building complex. So I think valuing our park systems and the natural habitats that we still have, and protecting them and being advocates for them, I think that's very important to do, not just for birds, but for all animals. Whenever I think about the idea of being a good neighbor, I think of my dad. He is a very, very friendly guy. He's also kind of quiet, and kind of keeps to himself, and yet he's very, very warm to everyone he meets and sees around town. When I specifically think about being a good neighbor and why I think of my dad, I think about how many times my dad gets a kick out of taking his snowblower out and not just blowing his driveway, but just walking down the sidewalk and making sure that the sidewalks are clear, not just for him, but for the mailman or mail lady, the neighbors that are elderly to get around. And I think that's really sweet. He's also the kind of guy that when he's driving around, if there's another car coming down the street, he'll just wave. We'll say, "Dad, who is that?" And he's like, "I don't know, I'm just being neighborly." Like, he actually said that to my sister one time. And so I think just being friendly, being helpful, I think that's what it means to be a good neighbor, and I model that off of my dad. I try to emulate him.